I'm not
And
gonna
I
tell
was
you.
like,
I'm
that's
not gonna
so
tell
much
you when we did it.
ketchup. Bro, how
I just
you?
rewatched Being John Malkovich.
Dude, that movie is such a
Yeah.
trip. You've been on an Andy Kaufman trip.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna watch that
But
he
your
made?
performance there reminded me of his puppy, her,
Hey, is that
well,
Max?
his puppet and my puppy. Hey, basta. All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. We're here to do a live coding stream. Come here. That we're going to start doing on Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. It's gonna be a regular.
Yeah. And today we are going to take a look at a feature that is very fun to play with. I'm going to share my whole screen here. And we're going to be using GSAP's Stagger feature to animate an icon, just like this. So I'm going to walk you through how I animated this icon. And
Looks good.
yeah. So
Can you
that's the
zoom
piece
in
we're
on
going to
it?
focus on.
Can you make it like as big as the browser and then show us that animation again?
Yeah. Let me,
Give it a double tap.
there we go.
Yes. That's nice because each of those little thatch elements animates independently, right? Like on a timer or something. Okay, this is exciting.
Yeah, well, this is what's special about the GSAP Stagger library, and that you can kind of target specific things. So first, we're going to take a look at the icon, and you can see that it is made up of just all these little teeth, right? This is just a piece of vector art, and then laid out on a grid.
Sick brand, by the way.
Thank you. It's for my brand Houndstooth that I'm currently working on. Now, there's two ways to do this, and I did it in both ways, and I'm going to actually show them both to you. So the first is, I created this as a singular union shape, like this is a single SVG. And when you export it that way, so I was going to lay it out here, but I guess I'll just do it in the browser here. I'll just disable the app loader here. We're just going to leave that on false. Leave all this to false. Because now it's just going to stay there.
Okay.
And we are also going to set playthrough to false. So you can see what I've done here. I've just created this icon component, and I can pass it props, and it toggles like the different animation states and play states. And the way that I built it here, so let's go ahead and actually take a look at this specific icon. I'm going to show you both of them. So I have it in my brand icon. So the first way is the simple way, but it didn't really work that well for me. So what I'm going to do here actually is swap out this component so you can see the difference between the two approaches. And these two approaches, let me get rid of this, are one, just hitting the path. So you'll notice that in the SVG file, this is actually broken up into different path components, right? Or path.
Each of those little tooth is a path.
Each tooth is, yeah, but the way you have to do that is in Figma, because at first if you export just like a singular union thing, it actually exports it like this. It's a single path.
Oh, okay.
And this won't work. Obviously, you can't stagger. There's no individual items to stagger an animation on. So in order to make sure that you're outputting your SVGs individually, is you can have them like unioned like this. Oh, let me go to the one that's actually grouped here. So you can see the way I have this. These are actually just laid out individually, and they're not unioned together. They're actually just grouped. And I'm exporting the group as an SVG.
Yep.
Rather than turn the whole thing into an SVG and then export the SVG as an SVG, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah.
And when you do it this way, you maintain this separate path, right?
And you thought we said, like, I thought it was going to be easier this way, and that's like you making everything flattened. You thought that would be simpler, right?
Well, that is the way. That's the
Yeah.
only way to do it if you want to do it this way. I'm going to show you the other way is what I did is export just this tooth and actually rebuild. So the one that you're seeing in the browser is not GSAP animating these SVG elements because I didn't like the timing. And
Right.
and I'm kind of anal about that. So what I did was, as you can see here, the one that you're looking at here, I am in my React markup here. I actually have an array of 27 spans that have the icon as a mask within a div. I have a little CSS icon system that I set up.
Nice.
I can walk through that later, but it's a little relevant here because you can place whatever you want in these. But I
That's
did
it.
27 because I'm breaking it up using CSS grid.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's 3 columns, right? And then however many rows. So there's 27 items on the left. And then you can see I'm going through 6 and printing 6 more. And then another 27 here for the right.
Not to interrupt you, but Yamamoto-san says just passing by to say hello. So
nice. Hello.
welcome to the stream, everybody. Thanks for
Welcome to the
the
stream.
comment, Yamamoto-san.
Yes, thank you. So you can see that I am assigning a grid area. So you can see I have L and then the index and then C in the index and R in the index because I wanted a lot more control over how this animation staggers across these elements. And you can see here using CSS grid, I have 8 columns, 8 rows, and then I define these template areas here. So you can see that it looks the same. Although, you know what, I did leave out a row. I just noticed there's supposed to be 3 rows here. And here I only have 2. Which is very funny. So what I would do there is pop this down, and we're going to have 9 of these rows. So you can see how this affects this right away. And then 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5. There we go.
It's wild that you're building it in with CSS. That's wild to me.
It's interesting, right? CSS grid is very fun, and you can get pretty crazy with these like template areas, and really create some pretty interesting shapes and animate everything in really interesting ways and make sure that things scale
Template areas.
in a nice way.
Wow.
Yeah. So with this here, I can actually right click and show you what's happening here. If you're not familiar with CSS grid. So you can see this looks like a lot, but in the markup, I'm just creating a new array and then mapping through it. So it's not a lot of markup to create this this type of thing here.
Yeah.
And they're just spans. But you see this grid here. I can click here and it shows you what's being created.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you can create these grids and kind of like overlap stuff. You can get really as a designer, Travis, if you haven't been around for the emergence of CSS grid, I think you would love playing around with it.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Some really interesting things.
It did kind of happen after I stopped being heavily into code with dev tips and stuff. This is really cool.
Yeah, grid is relatively new still, in a certain sense.
What's browser adoption like, or is that like even a thing that people concern themselves with anymore?
Browser people do concern themselves with that, but it's great. It's pretty ubiquitous. So I just need to update these real quick. 15, 16, and 17, and then we got to go through and do all of these, which is a little annoying. But this is a quicker way. I can paste these. So you can see how the CSS grid is affecting these specific like placements that I'm putting these in. And I did this a little bit overboard here to have additional control because I might want to have like different LEDs. What effectively this does is if you create an icon, and you don't have to do it with an icon, you can just have like dots, but using GSAP's Stagger, and especially if you want to use something like this, you can target very specific ranges or items, but you're essentially creating like an LED board that can move around, and you have quite a bit of control over it. So let me just update the right side here. So this is going to be this one. So I'm just copying and pasting these to add in an additional row, because I noticed that I left out a row from the actual icon. 24, 25, and 26. So this is just a little fun experiment with doing this with a CSS grid.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see here that once I have like my items, and this is also a good way to show that it doesn't need to be an SVG file that you're animating. It can be anything. It could be divs. As you can see here, I'm actually just animating different spans. So you can get pretty crazy with your layouts when it comes to CSS grid, and then how you're affecting the staggers of your animations.
Yeah.
So what I've done here in my React component, let me move this a little bit. I can actually, oops. Nope. I guess my shortcut changed. Great. That happens sometimes. I'll just close it manually. So you can see I have just this icon, React component, and I'm passing in like a dynamic width, so I can like set this dynamically, or set it to like a range or ratio using clamp, or to a specific size, and I can just pass that in through props. And for this one, I think I'm going to change this and give it like additional place states. So it would actually be like, play state, and then pass it a string, so I can get a little bit more dynamic. But here I actually broke up the play states into individual props for now, which is fine if you're just going to have like one or two. But if you're going to go more than that, it is nicer to just have a dynamic singular variable. Does that make sense?
It's a little bit over my head, but that's okay.
Okay.
Because I'm not too familiar with GSAP.
Well, right now, this is just React props. And what I'm referring to now, because these props are you create them. You create whatever you want here, right? You can fill this in and say, well, what things do I want to be dynamic about this, and what do I want to name those, right?
Got it.
So I can it's essentially just variables. You're passing
setting
variables
up
down. Yeah. And
Okay.
what I'm talking about here is more logic when it comes to setting up a system, right? So a system with different states. This one currently has a default state where it pauses. It has a playthrough state where it plays through all the way.
And those are GSAP parameters.
No.
Oh.
No, these are just logical conditions that I'm creating arbitrarily, right? So right now we're kind of just talking about like setting up the logic of managing different animation states. And what I'm saying is you can set a variable for each animation state, but if you're going to have a lot, right? Like let's say I have another one that is, I make it change rainbow colors, right? Rainbows, right?
Yep.
Let's say I make it do that. So I start creating all these different place states. At some point, it becomes much more convenient to just have a singular dynamic variable called place state, and then pass a string where you can have any place state. So you can have paused, play through. So it's a single variable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this doesn't really have anything to do with React or GSAP, right? This is more of just a logical systems architecture thing, right? Deciding how many variables you want or need to mess up, to dirty up your namespace, essentially. So ultimately, I will just make this a singular place state dynamic variable, but for now, I just have them Booleans because I was just building this with two different states, playthrough and loop.
Got it.
I hope that makes sense.
I think so.
Okay. And let me open up my. Oops. Don't know why my shortcut changed to open up my file browser. That's very annoying. What happened here?
That's the worst.
Every now and then it happens. Yeah, it should be. Yeah, anybody watching, let me know if that happens to you often, because it happens to me. I think it's just because 1Password is like taking over my.
Yeah, it's still your
taking
shortcut.
over, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why. That's strange. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's see. I have an error down here. Components brand index icon path conflict start. Yeah. We're going to delete that folder for now because we're just working on my loading page here. Icon path. Yeah. Okay. So you can see that with this version, I am just targeting spans and passing in just some control variables because I know what states I'm going to want. And with React, you kind of have to use these references to target certain things that you want to persist through renders, especially like a reference to something in the DOM. So we have a ref here on the div that I just call icon ref that's wrapping all of the individual pieces and printing them out. So I have like the left here, I have the center here, these little icons, and then of course the right here.
Got it. Yeah.
And then I'm laying those out. So each one of these represents a tooth, a little icon tooth here.
Yeah, and you have them like L0, L1, L2 so that you can target them for the animation. You have them like labeled like that.
Yeah, but I can also target ranges if I want in the future. Like it gives you a lot of flexibility, so I can like ripple out from the center from C2 to stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
But you don't really, with the good thing with GSAP is since I have this ref here and everything's inside of that, GSAP has a use GSAP hook, and in React, it replaces the use effect hook when you're working with GSAP animations because you can scope a DOM item and you can target something as general as span, like what I have here. So, normally you don't want to target just a span from a component because it's going to hit every span on the page, right? You have to get pretty specific. But luckily here, this will scope any animations to the DOM reference automatically. So that's a really, really good, that's a cool feature for the use GSAP thing. And I'm just targeting these spans, and you can see I'm animating it from auto alpha 0, which is opacity 0, visibility hidden, and then fading it in over a period of 0.6 seconds, and applying a stagger. And with the stagger, you can set an amount between like the overlap between each one.
Is that
and you can tell it
a duration stagger, like how the time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's two of them. There's amount, and I think there's also a duration in here as well. So duration, I think acts a little bit different. So each one has like
that's how long it takes, and the amount is time between
each individual one. Yeah, this tells the whole animation to take this much time, and then this is the stagger amount, like the overlap amount.
Got it. That's cool.
From what I understand.
Oh, that's cool. So it just it'll calculate the duration of each tooth because you have those two, the overall duration and the amount of time between each one.
In between them, yeah. Yeah. So you can see that I just played with these numbers until I got it to feel the way I wanted it to feel.
Yeah, boy.
Right? And when it's coming in, I'm applying a cubic easing in. And the cool thing is, you can make these dynamic as well for your different play states. So I can set this to center, and you can see that it comes out from the center there.
Ooh.
I can also set it from random, and you can see that it does some very cool random stuff. And for like full page transitions, like for this example, like I can actually just say, let me scale this to 10, right? We can bring this up. Let's bring it down a little bit more. So you can do some pretty interesting animations with your transforms, like a full page kind of scale reveal, and then like, reveal things randomly, fade it in and out randomly. You can just get pretty crazy with some very fun and interesting, unique page transitions that are branded. You can animate the zoom in, and then have the little pieces randomly fade out to reveal the next page. So there's a lot of flexibility with what you can do using this kind of approach. So as you can see here, I'm creating a timeline and applying to the timeline the intro animation. This always happens. This is the default state. As soon as the component mounts, it fades in. It starts this animation, right? And that's it. Then I have another effect here, use GSAP, and this one is actually re-rendering when these variables update. So I'm passing these through from the parent component, which means I can reuse this component all over the interface and just update the props dynamically and determine its play state and its different animations that are playing. So when playthrough gets added or loop, it will then finish the animation. And the way that it finishes is there's a current timeline that's living like in this local component's memory through renders. And I'm applying this TL current is that timeline, and you can actually just update it. So in real time, if these get updated, it adds this finishing animation to the timeline. And you want to do it that way, especially if you want to loop through or take advantage, because you don't just want to like GSAP 2 and do it without the timeline, because then it'll close them all down, and you have to keep. You can't just loop the same animation, right? You're essentially creating a new animation there. But with this, you're just adding on to the existing animation. And then if it loops, if it's up here, if these are set to false, like when these update, you want to reset this back to not repeat, and then set it back to its default state when it's in.
Got it.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, there's the way you've done it is you've broken this big idea into a lot of smaller ideas. That way you can be like really, when I say ideas, I mean like each tooth, and so that way you can be really specific about how they animate in and out. Yeah. And it looks like a lot, but that's just because you have a lot of control.
I have a lot of control here. Yeah. So let's go back to my app loader. And we will go ahead and set these back to there we go. So this component just sits on top of my UI, sits on top of the whole application, and it waits for the application to load my user authentication system before revealing the application. And once that happens, that's when it triggers the rest of the animation on the icon. So it's not entirely. Let me just comment this out here, because I don't want the background to fade away. I just want that to go there. So you can see here the playthrough. If I set this to false, it will just play and then stop. But if I set it to true, it will finish the animation. Now, if I just set it to loop, it'll just start looping, right? So you can see how nice this is to have an icon like this in different places, and using a single component that can become a functional piece of UI infrastructure. And if it's a branded piece, that's even better, right? Because you want the visual reminders of your brand to be engaging and useful. It's a little, you're planting the subconscious seed in the user's mind to remember your brand. It's good for business.
GVB.
So I'm actually going to leave this on false for now. And I'm going to show you the other approach, because this approach was a little heavy-handed, but it was on purpose, and I was really just having fun with CSS Grid. I just wanted to see if I can achieve this using CSS Grid.
We got Hushem saying hi from Iraq.
What's up, Hushem?
Yo, yo.
Thank you for joining.
What were you just saying? I interrupted you.
I was saying that this method that I was showing here of using the individual teeth, and then animating just spans and using CSS Grid to lay it out. This was both for control, because I wanted the stagger of the animation to look the way I wanted, but it was also just kind of an experiment, just for fun, to see if I could use CSS Grid to rebuild this, make it scalable and reusable. And it ended up being the right way to go for this. But now I'm going to show you just using the entire icon as a singular unit. And like I said before, from Figma, you have to lay out your SVG items however you want. So you can see here I have these grouped in little rows of these. But most importantly is you don't want to compress them into a singular SVG. You want to just group them. Just select them all and hit Command G.
Yeah.
Because that way, like I was showing earlier, when you export your SVG, it looks like this. You have these individual paths that you can animate. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you just get a singular path.
Now, when your logo is made up of a bunch of repeating items, this really kind of works,
Yes.
And the whole strategy you have of animating and creating the grid and the individual SVGs and like cycling through them really works because of the way that you've designed this logo on its own in the beginning. So now we're going to look at what does it look like when the logo is just one SVG with a continuous path. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, no. When it's one SVG with a continuous path, you can't animate it. So you have to export the individual components. Now, in this case, it works because you're right. This is a repeating pattern. But if you're animating any SVG, it doesn't need to be even repeating elements or anything. It could just be multiple visual elements within a singular logo. You can still stagger them, right? So you can export your SVG with each of those as their own component within the SVG, and then just animate them on. So I can show, I guess we can actually kind of do a quick example from scratch here.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and just delete this completely. And let's say your SVG icon or your brand icon is, let's say it's a circle. Or let's say it's 3 dots with a square inside, for example, right?
That's what's up.
Let's just say that that's your icon. So now we're looking at something with multiple shapes, right? Maybe we overlap these, whatever your icon is with different shapes. Let's make this one crazy, right? So this is your beautiful brand logo right here with different shapes, right?
It's nice.
So you can see I have these different pieces of vector art. Now, usually, if you want to export it for use later, you'll union it, right? And now this is a singular thing. The problem, and this is what you want to do for design, for exporting it for use in a lot of different places, but if you're going to want to animate it, it's a little bit different, because I'm going to show you when I export this as an SVG. Let me drop this into my folder here that I'm working on. Public static SVG. We'll just call this union for now. So this one is unioned. You can see that I just get this one singular thing here. I can't really, and don't get me wrong, with GSAP, you can actually animate all of this. You can animate the shapes and everything. But a lot of times you kind of just want a simple fade between, or not even a fade, like just different animations building up your logo.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and break this apart again. And instead of unioning it, we're going to select it all and just hit Command G. And we're just going to call this shapes. And now I will export this as an SVG. And you'll see that what we get here now is circle, 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 path, rectangle. Okay? So now we have some crazy options to animate and do really, really interesting things with your logo. So step one, the most important thing is, when you're exporting it for the purposes of like animating and controlling in the browser with code, group it instead of union it. And then you have this kind of control. Because now I have circles, and I can target these individual pieces of my logo using GSAP, which we're going to do right now. So what I'm going to do is actually take this and copy it. And we're going to get all of this out of here. We're going to close everything. And I'm going to come in here. And instead of this array, actually I'll do it on the icon path file. I'll just replace what I have here. So instead of this SVG, I'm going to drop in all of the markup from the SVG file that we just created in Figma. And you can see with my houndstooth logo, I have quite a bit here.
Yeah.
So I paste this, and the trick with React is you do want to, I like setting these to 100%, or you can just delete those. And you have to come in here and look for anything with 2 words and a dash, and you have to make it camel case. But it looks like there's nothing to change here, so that's good. A lot of times when you export SVG, you'll have different attributes that say like fill-rule or whatever it is, and in React, it'll give you an error. You have to make it camel case instead of with a dash.
Got it. Reactification.
Just a little tip. Yeah. So we have a icon path here, and what I'm going to do is go into the app loader, and we're actually going to import that specific component here instead of there we go. So now you can see we have our icon path, right? And of course I'm importing my CSS here, and you can see I have path, but if you look at our actual SVG file,
circles and rectangles.
Yeah, so we have a circle, rectangle. So the good thing is I could just say, SVG star, fill, right? Fill white, whatever I want. Or I can, the good thing about having it this way, I can target each individual one separately and animate them. So, let's say my circle, and I can, if I can either go into the actual markup here and give these like specific identifiers.
Right.
Or I can also just say nth of type 1 in CSS. Don't want those. There we go. We can say fill red, right? So you can see you have a lot of control now over your SVGs, and it's really interesting, especially if you're using your branded material. So your logos, your brand icon, you have them broken up like this, and you have a lot of control in the browser to make the user's experience with your product and brand interactive. And that ultimately is the goal, right? When someone's in your environment, your UI that you've created, you want the brand to be the most reinforced part of their psychology during that experience, if that makes any sense. Or at least I believe that.
Yeah, it's important. The brand is super important. So having this control over each element allows you to do really interesting and creative things, making it more memorable.
Yeah. and that is really it. It is just making it more memorable. So, I can come over here and all of these properties we can animate. So, if this beautiful Bajas collection of circles, squares, and shapes here.
Right. Yeah. You've got something really modern here.
If that is your logo, for example, you can do some fun stuff here. And all of these are animatable properties. But what's most important is once you have that with GSAP, so we're looking at essentially the same example as before. The only difference is instead of animating the SVGs that I was looping through in the last file, you can just get like the path. You can get these individually. So I can say like path, circle, right? So now it's fading in the path and the circle, and I'm staggering them. And then of course I can say, rect, right? So now it's going to stagger the animation across all of these, right? And what's cool is, as you can see, since this is a React component, I can come down here and I can say it's set playthrough to false right now. So it pauses in its default state. If I want it to play through, I can just hit true. Of course, I do have to update these targets for the closing animation. So we're going to update those targets here. And I'm going to update these targets right here. There we go. And if I refresh it, you'll see that it'll come in and then go out. And you can pass in, delays as variables if you want it to stop. And then I can also just say loop, because this is an animation state I've already created. And you can see that this reusable system essentially works with any kind of icon. You can actually create this kind of system and then just go into the icon and kind of just fine tune, okay, well, how do I want these animations to be for this specific piece of UI? Or this specific SVG icon. You can have any kinds of animations, right? You can change the colors, the sizes of the individual elements. And this is a singular SVG, as you can see here. It's just one SVG file.
Right.
That's dropped right in as the React component. And now look at all this cool control I have over different place states. And then I can reuse this component anywhere, right? I can actually, put them, I have a bunch of them here if I want. So you can see what's happening here.
Right.
And since it's SVG, I can just scale this infinitely, right? I can scale it to 10, right? And it's not losing any kind of resolution.
Yeah.
And you can animate this stuff. And even with this, like if this was your branded element and you have these shapes in your logo, and then you're also zooming in and using them as abstract transition elements, now you're really reinforcing your brand within the user's experience as they navigate through your application. And once you have this simple system set up, you can see it's pretty easy. Now you just have a singular component to use throughout your application. And you just pass it props, and those props are essentially arbitrary. You can see that I'm giving it like a width, and I can hard code this, or I can set it with a clamp or a percentage, whatever I want. I'm looping it. I can pass in we're just going to set this back to playthrough false. So it pauses, and we're going to get rid of that loop now. And you can see that I'm passing an onComplete callback. And what we've done here is I'm passing onComplete as just an anonymous function as a prop, a possible prop to be passed down. And if it is there on playthrough, you can see here on complete, if it is playthrough, it will fire off whatever function I want. So this gives me super dynamic callbacks. So for example, in my application loader where I'm using this, what I'm doing here is I'm playing the animation and the playthrough is set to false. So it's actually pausing and waiting until my user has been initiated. So I can come down here and put my user in it, so it's false, and once my user is initiated, it will fade out. So it finishes the animation after my user from my Firebase authentication and all that stuff has initiated. So we have this kind of visual, it waits and it plays. So you know you're never going to play the animation. It's it's waiting on something, which is nice.
Right.
And then when it finishes, I want to set this app loaded state to true. And the reason I'm setting app loaded state is because this is what I'm using globally when I'm triggering animations throughout the user interface that I want to wait for this intro to play. So I just, before I play any other animation, I just make sure app loaded is set to true. And this is the place where that actually gets set. So you can see that when this finishes, it sets app loaded to true. And then it will play this animation which fades out the background to reveal what's behind it, as you can see here. Right.
Okay, yeah.
So now we've got this really cool little intro animation with cool colors. And you can see here with the original icon that this is the same thing. It's the same component.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. And if I want, I can swap it out with our little icon path component. So I can come down to the UI where that lives. And instead of icon, I can bring in the other file. And update this icon path. So you can see here that we've got our loader. It's quite small. I should scale it up. And then we have the same thing happen here. And you can see that it's staggered the animation. And then if I set this into a loading state, it will start looping it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how reusable a system like this is for not just branded components, but like any kind of animated SVG. But it's especially powerful when it's branded piece of your interface. For micro interactions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put this back to my original cool icon instead of this silly one that we've been playing with here. And we're going to come back to the app loader, and we're going to shut off this fading out animation just so we can focus back on this shape here. And I'm just going to zoom in so it's nice and visible. And we're going to set this to false. Yeah. So it's pretty cool, I think. And actually, I'm going to put this back to my icon as well.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Look at
That's
that.
the money.
Look at that beautiful thing. Yeah.
What other types of... Oh, go ahead.
The reason I kind of skipped why I did this with the divs instead of the paths, and I can show that to you now. I can actually undo all of this, and put that back. And actually, we're going to come back here and put in the icon path. Oops, and we have to update the import. There we go. So now what you're seeing here is me animating the individual paths. Now there might be a better way to do this, but I didn't like the stagger here.
Jane is here.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry,
Welcome.
popping in late.
Oh, let me remove myself. No, it's fine. There's a mix-up with the time here, but I was just walking Travis and everybody through how we make this icon.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Animated.
Check it out.
And you can see here, though, that the stagger that I'm running in GSAP, let me scroll all the way back up because I'm printing the SVG right in as a component there. So this is from center. So if I set it to, top left here,
Mm-hmm.
and set this one to top left as well, set them all to top left. And if I'm animating the individual ones, you see how it kind of comes down from... I didn't like the way that this is animated.
What do you not like about it?
I want it to start from here and move down, but it seems to be starting at the top left of each one of
column.
these.
Yeah.
Of each column.
Oh, yeah.
But what's interesting is it is only animating these paths, but you can see each one is just laid out like this because it's an SVG. Now I could probably rearrange the order of these. There's probably some way, and anybody watching or listening, if you're familiar with GSAP Stagger, when you're applying it to like an SVG, if there's a little bit more control over how this animates on. But I didn't particularly like that, which is why I ended up building it with just spans and then laying that out with CSS grid.
Right.
Which is what I showed originally. Because you can see here, if I swap this back out to just the icon, you can see that this one comes in a lot smoother from the left, even though it's still the same top left coordinate.
So you're targeting it individually instead of the column? Sorry, I'm coming in late, so I'm trying to understand.
He laid them out with CSS grid.
Yeah, there's two ways to do this. You can prepare an SVG file properly. Yeah, that's just a quick thing for demo purposes. You can prepare an SVG file properly, export the individual elements as a group instead of a single SVG.
Okay.
And then you get a file that looks like this. You get the individual pieces of the SVG inside. And then using GSAP, you can animate those. And that's great. That's easy. It's beautiful. But in this case, I didn't particularly like how GSAP was animating the individual paths. So for funsies, I wanted to build it with CSS grid to see if that would give me a little bit more control and give me the results that I was looking for. So in order to do that, I just created a span and printed out. Each span just has this individual background SVG as a mask. And the reason I do that as a mask is I have like an SVG system that I've created where I can pass in, color, red. Wait, am I overriding it somewhere already?
Do you need a...
Oh, right. Yeah.
Semicolon.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, VS Code, for telling me that. So you can see I can pass in, I can pass in like CSS variables into this class here, and it will trickle down. And I can show you that real quick. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I love CSS. So you see I have icons it's Sass here in Next.js. I have a CSS running, but it's just CSS here. You can see anything with the class of icon. I can pass in a size as a variable, but it defaults to 16 pixels, so small icon. I have display inline block. The mask size is contain, so it will stretch to the size of this box, whatever your SVG file is.
Oh, right, yeah.
But it won't go beyond it, and it'll maintain its aspect ratio. And it sits in the center of the box. It doesn't repeat. And then I give it a background color. And the reason we're doing mask is because the whole div has a background color. But what we're doing now is for each icon-brand, icon-brand name, -user, I'm updating just the mask image property. Now, some of these I have some additional things, like for the brand, I want it to default to 40. But you can see down here, like for the user icon, I'm just updating the mask image. For the icon tooth, I'm just updating the mask image. And what that means is each background, it's just a square with a color, but then the SVG comes in and masks that color. And this is really good for single color icons. Because then I can animate all of these different properties, right? I can call it, yellow. It turns yellow. I can come over here and I should have done this. Just have a transition. We're going to do color 0.4 seconds with an ease, and then we'll do opacity 0.2 seconds linear. Right. So now, if I come over here and I update these, you'll see that it actually. Wait. Oh, my bad. It's background color. I'm very funny. Background dash color. There we go. So now, as I update these, you'll see that it will just automatically fade in and out.
Hmm.
Right. So this gives me a lot of control over single color icons throughout my interface,
Nice.
especially when I'm applying like art directed styles that affect the. Instead of art directed pages, you can go into like a different area of your site that has a whole different type of theme, right? So you can
Mhm.
go pretty beyond light theme and dark theme. You can have
Yeah.
Christmas theme and whatever, psychedelic theme, any kind of art directed theme, and it isn't just the page. You can affect the entire like user experience, the UI. It's pretty fun,
Yeah.
very fun stuff,
Awesome.
as you can see here. So we're gonna get rid of that and leave it white for now. So that was a little tangent, but here I'm just spitting out these spans and giving it a couple class names to create this. And I've got 27 on the left column and the right column, and then 6 of these in the middle. So I'm printing them out that way. I have 27, and then I'm giving these a grid area of L, and I'm passing in the index number dynamically because I'm mapping through an arbitrary number of items in an array, as you can see. So this L, whatever, C 0 through 6 or 5, and then R 0 through 26. That way I can then come in here
Yep.
and assign each one of those a very specific position on a grid. And like I was saying earlier, I was really just playing around with CSS Grid because it's fun. And in the end, this did give me my desired result because you can see the animation comes on. I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
The way that it's animated here.
And now you're animating a simple parameter of, opacity or alpha. What did you have it called?
Yeah, auto alpha.
Auto alpha, yeah. But
Yeah.
you could animate really anything, right? Like you could do scale, position.
Yeah, I can say
You could do skew, and like you can like make them flip into space into.
Exactly.
There's a lot, yeah. Because you've broken it up into all these little pieces and makes them so flexible. Now your options when you're being creative are very, very broad.
Yes. Yeah, so you can see here, I just
That's cool.
applied a scale, and it actually does look even doper.
Yo,
I actually,
it's doper.
I'm actually gonna leave that. We can also background color. You can also update like HSL values, but we're just gonna say background color from like yellow, and we'll animate it to like white. And right now you can see that I'm doing these in a single from to animation, but you can also break up each one of these into their own animations if you want to do some interesting. I mean, you have so much control here; it's insane. So now you're going to see it's going to change color a little bit.
Oh, that's cool.
I was wondering if I could do something like that, where like the colors just kind of fade in through.
Can you do like a rainbow?
Yeah, like.
Yeah.
But you'd have to target each one, right? What its color and assign an individual color, or is there like
I can add another timeline, so I can say tl.current to, and we're gonna hit that span. And this is gonna go from pink to, yellow, and then over here we can say the background color can then go to white. Oops, of course. Never wants to put them in the right place. There we go. So then we're going to do another stagger here. And instead of applying all of those things, I'm just going to say 0.1. Because you can also pass in just a number if you don't want to specify other pieces. So okay, let's see. And yes, there you go. So now what you're going to see is it comes on yellow. We see some white come in, but that's going quite slow. So I will still this same style here. We're going to drop in that, and I will also add an ease to this. I'll add a comma there. And we're going to ease it a cubic in. There we go. And let's zoom in a little bit. So now you can see some pretty fun stuff. You know, I should probably make this go...
Oh, I like that.
Purple. And instead of having TL2, we can actually chain these.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this, I want it to be... I want this to overlap a little bit. So we're going to put this by 0.4 because this duration, background color, purple, duration, we're going to call it 0.6. And now what I'm going to do is actually just duplicate this a couple times. And we're going to go from purple to orange.
You're cycling through the
and
colors.
then
Oh, I
back
see.
to
I see.
white.
Yeah.
Right. So you can do some pretty interesting things here. So you can see here we're going to get some interesting cycles through these colors.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
And it really is just a matter of... Oh, wait, let me put a minus here. There we go. It really is just a matter with playing with these values until you get like the right duration and kind of like here, I don't think we want an in. We're going to do an in-out on these. In, out, oops, in, out. There we go. So now you can see we're going to get a little bit of a smoother color. And then here at the end of this, I can say some pretty fun stuff. If I want to loop this, you know, I can actually just pass in loop. So instead of play through, we're just going to say loop. And this is going to just kind of loop through this.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also set it up to just loop through specific pieces of it so it doesn't fade out. But you can kind of see how much power you have over animating really anything, you know, especially if you have them in a single SVG file. It's just nice and portable. But it could just be multiple spans, and they don't have to be repeating patterns or anything. It can be different shapes, like what I was showing earlier with the beautiful circles and squares and random shapes here.
Abstract.
Just to show that it doesn't have to be repeating patterns of shapes. It can be just different shapes.
Yeah, I like this use case though. Like if you were to land on a site and the logo was like kind of going through like this, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So for example,
we got a
let's
compliment
go
here. Wonderful animation here from Mahau. I don't know how to say your name, but thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
So here what we're going to do is set this back. And instead of loop, we're going to set this back to my playthrough state. And it's going to be reliant on if the user is initiated. So we're going to say user init is the variable that will update. So here, what you'll see is, oops, let me go ahead and save this here. So what you'll see here is it'll play, and it'll finish the animation when the user has loaded. And then you'll see the same thing plays up here. And look how cool this is, right? But it stops there. So it's now displayed. And if I want to set this to loading, I can actually click here to put the application into a loading state. And you'll see that now it's just playing the loop of that animation, including the color cycles. And I can update the, you know, I can go in and fine tune that loading state.
Yeah, I like it. It's like a little nod to, I don't know. It just like feels very bookendy to me.
Aditya says hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Addie.
Hello. Thank you for joining.
Just out of curiosity, if you wanted to like create it almost as like a ripple effect, so like they kind of like come forward and then back, like kind of.
You could use like an easing on the scale.
It would,
like
yeah, you'd want to ease it a little bit more. And if I think I know what you're talking about,
like a bounce ease, that would be interesting because then each piece would be like go boom 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 boom.
Yeah, bounce with color isn't too visible. That's usually you want to see that with like something in motion. If I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But we're gonna come down here is the cool thing about these GSAP timelines is this is going from alpha 0 to yellow, and then we're going here. So before I get here, I can say dot add label, and we can call this rainbow, for example.
Rainbow.
And here at the end of this, on complete, I'm going to say, you can see it auto-populated here if play through, although I don't want to do that. We're just going to keep playing the rainbow. So it should loop here, even if I don't have loop passed in. Yeah, there we go. So it is playing it. Because we are going some purple to orange. So if we're actually going to do a rainbow, let's do red, orange, yellow. Actually, we're going to put these in between here. Yellow, green, blue. So we've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. All the colors of the rainbow. Remember that song? So you can see what I'm doing here is when it comes in and plays and it gets to the end here, I'm just actually looping from that part of the timeline. And now you're seeing a nicer looking scaling here. And pulsating.
It does look
colors.
nice, dude. It looks really good.
We can extend this duration a little bit.
Can you zoom it in?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
There we go.
Oh,
so, you know, for most of these, this cubic in out is a little bit too, a little bit much. So to make things simple up here, I'm going to say const rainbow, what do we want to call this? Ease, rainbow ease. And we're going to say, right now we'll set it to just a power 1 in out, for example. And this way it's a little bit easier to play around with these. I'm also going to say const rainbow duration, and right now we'll set this to 0.8, for example. So each of these is going to overlap by 0.8. So after this rainbow label, we're going to update all of these durations to use our variable. And again, these variables can be dynamic, passed in as props from a parent component. So you have like an insane amount of control over your animations. Rainbow duration. And then also these ease, we're going to update these as well to be the rainbow ease. So I'm going to go through and select all of these. Last one right here. Rainbow ease. Okay. So now let's go ahead and refresh it. So you're not seeing the stagger as much. So let's actually increase this duration to like a second. And for all of these overlap delays, we're gonna just not overlap them as much, so the animation can finish before the next color comes in. So we're gonna probably overlap it just by like 0.4 seconds. So now we should see a bit cooler and more subtle of a transition.
Yeah.
Right?
That's nice.
Yeah,
So
like
it's just kind of glowing. I think I want a little bit more ease in there. We're going to go with let's try a power 3 in out to kind of just put a little bit more emphasis on the movement between colors. It's just a fun, subtle thing.
So much
and
control.
just a nice example of what you can very quickly do And then once you have this component built, you reusing it through your application at different sizes and different play states to represent different loading states, or just to represent different interaction states if a user interacts with it. It's just this one component, and you can pass in your variables.
That's so cool.
And reuse it through your interface.
It's fun that you can change that. The one that was before that state was like giving me like ASMR. I don't know what it was about it. It just like felt really good. This one feels good too, but the other one was like, I don't know. The one right before, I think it was like
Power 1.
Oh, it was 1.
Oh,
or was it 4? Was it cubic?
I think.
4?
Oh,
I think it was. It might have been this.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I like that one.
You heard it.
No, they're all good. They're all good. Yeah, they're really good.
I like
ASMR is a weird thing.
We can do an expo in out and let these go for a second and see what that looks like. It's just fun to do stuff like that with your interface, especially with branded elements.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think that it makes your brand strong within the environment. So, any questions? Let's go ahead and stop the screen share and see if you guys have any questions. If anybody in the chat has any questions, let's see. It's cool. Tell this guy put this in background. Okay.
I don't think we have any outstanding questions. I've been monitoring the chat. It doesn't look like it. We have some people talking about how good it looks. We got some wows, got some wonderful here, and then we have some.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good, man. You did great on this. So this is like the first of many live streams revolving around coding happening in the middle of the week. Is that right? You guys want to talk about your plans for a moment?
Many live streams in the middle of the week. Well, no, just once a week.
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah.
We'll be hanging out and focusing on code, talking about code, maybe cool stuff that we saw. I'll be walking through some stuff that I've been working on, live streaming, some building out some features, kind of like I did now, walking through how to achieve that animated effect with GSAP.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it from beginning too. So I'll go back and watch all the things I missed.
I hope it was good. I don't even remember what I said. I hope it all made sense.
Yeah, I love it. The end is really cool.
Yeah, it's so powerful and so much fun what you can do with these animation libraries. Especially GSAP is so powerful, and being able to be a designer and create your elements with how you want them to be different based on user interaction within a digital environment, and being able to execute that so easily with GSAP is so much fun. And then you also find like these fun, like happy accidents, like what we did earlier when I animated the scale. I was like, oh, that looks way doper. So I'm just going to leave the scale on the actual icon because it felt. I can
felt doper, bro.
I know, it gave me chills. So in these type of like explorations and projects, is that where you end up with in your end product? It's just playing around with like different elements and easing and all that.
Trying it out.
Yeah, a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it is for sure that. I'm gonna delete this rainbow here.
That was fun.
And we're going to make sure I'm using the same animation from before. Auto alpha 06 cubic in. But we are going to keep the scale, no background color. Auto alpha 06 cubic in. Here we go. There we go. So now this is where it's at. And look how cool that looks when that scale gets animated. So what I'm going to do here is also put the scale back to 0.2. And then on this one, which forces the animation to come back in, we're going to set it there. So now we have this really pretty staggered
beautiful
icon. And if I go to my parent component and I put it back to this being relied on my user being initted, and then we can fire this fading out and removing the component from the DOM. Now you can see what it looks like in the actual interface here.
It came back at the left. That's cool.
And then you can see it come back up there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot.
And when the animation's in a loading state, it just loops through it.
Cool.
Yeah, and that scale actually is so dope because it really emphasizes each
Mhm.
individual point.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very
dude.
cool.
It's nice.
Yeah. Next week, do you want to go through those floating images? Like that looks like a
Yeah,
fun
next
thing
week
to
I was
do.
planning on presenting this gallery because
Mhm.
this, as you can see, it responds to my mouse movement.
Yeah.
And these are all different sizes, and it goes forever. And this is another reusable component that I created using CSS Grid. So I thought, yeah, we can go over how these, just an interesting, responsive, dynamic gallery can be built with CSS Grid like this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's probably the thing that I'll go over next Tuesday.
Cool.
So hopefully everybody's into that.
That was
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks, Max.
Beautiful. I
Let's
love
see,
it.
3JS stuff would be lovely. Yeah, 3JS stuff would be lovely. I'm still on my learning journey when it comes to that. But as I get more comfortable with 3JS, I definitely will be showcasing a lot of that stuff as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Looks like we have like some code. Addie dropped some code.
I think
No idea.
someone's trying to get sneaky with our chat. I'm hitting,
No.
mhm.
What? What?
No.
Yeah. Might have to kick that person.
No. Is that the Addie we know? I don't know.
Uh-uh.
Oh, it's not. Okay. We know Addie too. He's cool.
So I gotta go. It's been fun. See you guys
Yeah.
here next Tuesday. Actually, we'll see you first on Sunday for the Sunday sermon.
Yeah,
we'll see you on Sunday.
Podcast.
See you Sunday.
And
Still
then
have
next
those.
Tuesday for the next coding session.
All right. Take it easy.
Cool.
Super
Thank
fun.
you so much, Max.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
Ciao.